Hello, I'm Sam. I'm a developer here at Secret Source. I've been here about a year, well, just over a year now, and I was doing about 6 months, well, probably about 9 months of coding before that. And I was actually self-taught. So I'm going to be doing two really short talks today, really. The first one's going to be about how I track my learning, because Ted was intrigued how I managed to learn everything to get me to the stage where I could work for Secret Source. And then the second talk I'll do will be things I wish I'd known when I learned React. And I'm not sure how much you guys know about React, but I mean, even if you guys have already started learning, it'll be quite interesting just to see, just to tell you what the things that I struggled with. And also I'd be intrigued to hear what you guys have struggled with as well. And then what I'll do is at the end, we can have time for any questions or comments if there are any. So I will crack on with this presentation then. So yeah, this is the first one, how I track my learning. So like I said at the start, I was self-taught, which means that, well, actually, before I start, let me know if I'm talking too fast, because I don't know how strong your English is, and I tend to talk fast with a slightly different accent. So if I'm going too fast, just wave or shout and say, más despacio, por favor. Okay, all right then. So how I track my learning. So I was self-taught. And by that, I mean that I didn't go to university to learn programming, and I didn't do any boot camps. My background is quite varied. It's in like music production, project management, working for NGOs. And before that, I was working as a coach, so working a lot with psychology and other humans. And I decided I wanted to become a coder. And I did look at doing a boot camp, but I couldn't afford it at the time, essentially. I couldn't justify the cost. So I thought, okay, well, I have some time free because I was in between jobs, and thought, let me learn this myself. So this is basically just a quick talk on the things that I did. And you can, I guess, use this concept to learn anything really. But I do want to say this is just how I did it. You don't have to copy any of this. Just take what's useful for you and leave the rest. All right, so first slide. Let's click that. So the first thing I did was have what we call a roadmap, which is essentially just a list of topics and areas to learn. So when I first started, it was, the stages even before React. So I was lucky. I had a friend who I met in Las Palmas years ago, and he was a developer. And I said, what do I need to learn to get started? And he said, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Start with those three, and then we can work it out from there on. So having a list of things to learn was a good structure for me. It helped me realize what to learn, and more importantly, at which stage. Because if someone would have said, go and learn React, and I'd never learned HTML or CSS or JavaScript, it would have been a lot harder. So having a roadmap really helps. And I'll mention this in the next talk, and there'll be a little image just to see, if you've never seen what a roadmap looks like, it's really useful. Other things I added to my list of things I wanted to learn was things that I was struggling with, meaning that I didn't quite understand them. So whenever I saw something in a video or was looking at something in the documentation, I would make a note and say, oh, I don't really know what's happening there. So I would make a note, and then I would come back and learn it. Other things you can add to your roadmap would be things that you need for your current task. So this is now more when I'm in a job, there still may be things that I don't quite know how to use a certain technology. So since I've started Secret Source, I still use a roadmap, but now it's things that I need to learn to be able to do the job. So when I first started, there was a lot of things in there. I think Redux was probably the main one, which is it's state management for React. So as well as stuff to do your current task, you also need to have a look at what you might need in the future. And this might be projects that you're going to be working on, or it could just be something you're just interested in and want to learn. And that can also decide what you want to do with your coding journey. Like what kind of developer do you want to be? What kind of area do you want to work in? What industry? What kind of companies? If you know the answer to some of those questions, you can you can figure out what technologies you're going to need if you want to aim in that direction. One of the things I did with my roadmap was I had a few different people look at it. I was lucky, actually. I did a lot of posts on Instagram while I was learning. I did the 100 Days of Code challenge, which some of you guys might have seen or heard about. And through doing some stuff on Instagram, I became friends with a guy who actually worked at GitHub. And he was, I think he was a senior engineer at GitHub, which is quite a cool contact to have. And I showed him my roadmap at the time. And one of the things that he actually noticed on there was that there was nothing to do with tests. He says, "Where's your tests? I need integration end to end and, automated tests." And I'd never even heard of these things at the time. So it's good to have someone who works in the industry have a look at this list of things that you've got to learn, and they can say, okay, this is important. This is important. You probably don't need this as much, but you need this. Where's this? So it's always worth having an extra pair of eyes, have a look at your list. And the final point here is to think just in time. And by that, I mean, you don't have to learn everything at the same time before you start. So only learn things when you need them. So for example, only learn React once you've learned, HTML and JavaScript, really. So just do it when you need it. So don't feel that pressure of, oh my God, there's all these things on the list. How am I ever going to do this? Just do the one thing that you need at that time. Okay. Actually, yeah. So this is an example of my old roadmap. So when I first started my first project with Secret Source, I made a list I basically went through the whole code base and looked at what are the areas I don't really understand what's happening. And some of them were like lines of code, but some of them were concepts or libraries. So I made a list of all the things I didn't really understand, and slowly I would go and learn them, just go and play with them, go and try and understand. So you can see there's things on there like Redux, higher order components. I mean, again, this might be a bit too advanced for where you guys are in terms of your React knowledge. I'm not too sure. But you see there's material UI in there, which is it's a UI library. So it's like CSS components and things like that. And I'd never really used those before. So I had to spend some time just understanding what material UI actually did and how to work it. Okay, so once you've got your list, then you need to set aside some time to learn. So what I did before I got the job at Secret Source is my circumstances were a bit different. So I had a lot of time. I could solely focus on learning. So I would do at least 3 hours every day, just waking up in the morning, looking at my roadmap. Okay, what do I learn today? Okay, I'm going to learn promises from JavaScript. And I would just, read some tutorials, have a play, and I would do that every day pretty much. Now I'm in the job. What I've been doing pretty much since I started was have an hour. Well, firstly, you get the 2 hours. Is it 2 hours? Yeah. As part of working for Secret Source, they give you 2 hours training time, and you can use that however you like. So I utilize that to work on my roadmap. I also did a bit of work on a Saturday morning. That's mainly because my brain was so tired from work in the evening that I couldn't possibly learn anything, in the night. So I would wake up on a Saturday morning with a fresh brain and just spend like an hour or two just learning different things. You can see this is a snapshot from my calendar where I've had a look at a bit of CSS, some high order components, and yeah, just doing little bits at a time. So some people, like you see the first note says AM versus PM. So what helped me a lot when I was learning to code is I understood a lot about, I guess, psychology and productivity. So I knew the best time for me to be learning was in the morning. I'm more awake, I have more energy. That's the best time for me. Some people are the other way. They're what we call night owls. So they prefer staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning, and they get in the zone and they can concentrate more. So if you know when you're more productive, use that as the time to do your learning. And when you do that, remove any distractions. Like if you can, I was using a few apps to turn off other apps and just make sure there's no noise around or any distractions, basically. So I used to just sit in a room with some quiet. And actually, one of the best things I did, they're behind me now, was I bought some noise cancelling headphones, so I could really just block out all the distractions around me and just concentrate on the code. Number 3 was I tracked my learning hours per week. Before I started the job, like I said, I was doing about 3 hours per day, and I found that was a good level for me. When I first started learning how to code, some people would say, do 12 hours a day and 10 hours a day, and you can maybe do that for like a few weeks, but you will essentially just burn out and your brain will probably explode. So the idea is to make it realistic and sustainable. So not too much, but not too little that it's hardly any effort. So for me, I think I was doing 3 hours a day. So that's what, 15 hours a week, roughly. And I would measure that each day. And I also want to remind you, I wasn't working in a job at the time, so I had no other responsibilities. So I was quite lucky in that regard. So I would track it every week, and I would aim to do 15 hours a week. Some weeks I would do more, some I would do less. Some days I would do less, some days I would do more. But on an average, if you have a target, it gives you something to work towards. And then at the end of the week, I would add up all my hours. So these letters here are basically Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's the el días del semana. And I would just have a look at I think Friday afternoon when I finish and I finish the learning, I would add up my hours, see how many I did, and I would ask myself, am I on schedule? Did I make it to 15? And everyone can use a different figure. Did I lose focus? Did anything distract me? And if so, what could I improve? So there were times where I think there's a few times where I was exercising like late in the evening, like I would go running or play football, and that would mess with my sleep a bit. And then I wouldn't be able to focus the next day. So I would make a note to maybe exercise earlier in the day so it doesn't mess with my sleep. So the more you start tracking this, you almost get like data and metrics, and you can see where you're doing well and maybe where you could potentially improve. And then following on from that, at the end of the month, I would then add up all the weekly figures. And again, just look at what worked, what didn't, and how can I improve? Because I think initially I started out doing, I think it was maybe 10 hours a week, and I realized that's actually quite low. I could probably do 15. I tried to go a bit higher, but I realized for me, my brain basically cannot do any more after about 3 or 4 hours of, actual learning. Because one of the differences I found when you're learning to code, like learning something takes more brain energy than doing something, because you're really focusing, and your brain essentially is a muscle, and it will lose power and energy like a battery would after a while. So it's harder to learn than it is to actually do it once you've learned it. So that being said, what I would do actually is in the mornings, then I would do what I call active learning. So I was really hammering, like really using the brain. I was building stuff. I was following tutorials and documentation, and until my brain would just die, which is usually around 3 or 4 hours. And then I would just, sort of recover for the rest of the day, maybe go do some exercise. And in the evenings, I would do what I call passive learning. So these are things you can kind of learn about that don't use your brain too much. So I would follow a lot of interesting guys on YouTube that were developers that were talking about their life and their job. So you'd understand a bit more about what it's like to be a developer, what kind of things they do. And it takes less energy to consume this, but it really helps understand a bit more maybe about the industry or the life of a developer, which was totally new to me, because I'd had a few friends that were developers. And in fact, some of my coaching clients were developers, and but I knew nothing about code at the time, or nothing about the industry. So there might be guys that you follow on YouTube or Instagram that literally talk you through the code, but there's also other guys that talk about the life of a developer. And I found that was something I could do in an evening that didn't take too much energy. One of the things that I mention here is getting out of tutorial hell as soon as you can. So I don't know if this even translates or whether you guys have heard of this before, but it's essentially, it's something I struggled with when I was learning, which was I would go to my roadmap. I would say, oh, I'm going to learn this today. And then I would go and follow a tutorial on YouTube. And I would say, yeah, cool, I've learned that. And then I would go on to the next thing. And then I would follow a guy or girl on YouTube. And I would think, yeah, I've learned that. But what happens is when you come to build something that doesn't have a tutorial or someone showing you how to do it, that's when you realize, oh, maybe I haven't actually learned this. And that's called tutorial hell, when all you do is just keep doing more tutorials, but you don't really solidify that knowledge. You kind of know it at the time, but each day goes by, you remember it less and less and less. And when there's no one to show you how to do it, that's actually where you become a better developer, is you get the skill to be able to figure it out yourself. It's like, if you're watching a tutorial, you just press back on YouTube and follow what the guy or girl typed. It's like, okay, cool, I solved the problem. But if no one else is there, then that's hard. And that's when you really learn the skill of how to Google, how to understand what's happening, what's going wrong. Because if you're just following a video, it's all done for you, basically. One of the things I did was how to play with, you might have heard of like HackerRank or Code Wars. I found something called Edabit, which is kind of a more basic version, because I realized that my JavaScript knowledge wasn't that good. When I got into React, I was like, oh, again, I thought I knew all JavaScript. So yeah, I'm ready for React. And then I realized, oh, hang on a minute, I could do with some more practice. So having a look at these websites can almost give you an idea of where your level is in terms of problem solving. And I guess it's algorithms and kind of data structures to some degree, but it's more learning how to manipulate data, which is a lot of what we do in the job. Yeah, so as I said at the start with this, take what you like out of this talk, leave the rest, find what works for you. You might be thinking, Sam, what are you talking about? This is of no interest to me. And that's fine. This is just me just telling you guys how I did it. So if any of this is helpful, you can take parts of it or you can just leave it all. But what I always just want to leave you guys with on this part of the talk is just keep doing the hours. Like you will get there. I don't know what you guys are learning or what your levels are like at the moment, but I knew that if I just got up every day, did a few hours, I would eventually get there. And here I am now telling other people how I did it. So my strategy must have worked. But because I only did 3 hours instead of 10, I didn't resent the work. I didn't get burnt out. I just did a little bit, and just kept going and going and going. So that's the end of my learning talk.
Yay.